Yeah, Jordan's in the house.
Sponsored by Lifeline Screening. Are you at risk? Get screened for stroke and cardiovascular health. So, because when we start talking, we're
Uh,
gonna get some good stuff anyway. So, okay, all right.
yeah,
So,
he was getting off from work, heading home. We were just catching up. Haven't talked to him in a couple of weeks. We normally try to talk once every week or two. Just to keep track of each other, make sure we're doing all right. And then as I was talking to him, he was telling me that Jared was trying to call him. So I was just like, get off the phone with me, talk to Jared. I
mhm.
was like, I gotta go to the podcast with Dad anyway. So I was like, I was like, give me about an hour. You know what I'm saying? Give or take, give me about an hour. I was like, and I'll give you a call back once we're done.
Yeah, I spoke with Jared this week also. He's everything's kind of copacetic, taking it one step at a time and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the same
Uh,
thing John was telling me.
that so I just kind of just left it with just kind of just touch base and stuff with him on that. Um, Virtually, I guess that was about it. This, raising a family and dealing with kids and stuff, and having outside. I know that for myself, that was my whole thing. That when I got together with Joyce and you merging the two families, that's always a kind of a difficult situation there. Um, it was fun for the holidays because we always had tons of people and stuff around. But at the same time, when the holidays were not there, there were
Thank you.
things that I had to deal with, on a constant basis. And it's okay when you're dealing with young kids. Because I know that here it is when we first got together, me and Joyce got together, um, it was just us because everybody was moved out.
Hmm.
So we were, I was 49 and she was 55, and we were sort of like an empty nest, just us. And I was able to, because the house was a mess, and we wound up redoing the house, fixing up everything. I mean, some things you have to start to take a second look at. Okay, when you go in and you're seeing doors that have holes in the damn door. Okay,
Right.
it's like you start to think. I started walking and said, "Now, what prompts somebody to go ahead and take their fists and go through a damn door?" So obviously they were saying something ain't right there. Hey, something ain't right. So, but I wind up fixing all that up, fixing the house up. We got rid of all the junk and totally cleaned it up and everything else. And then one by one, here they come. So first you had John. John was staying down south, and he came back. But first you had the daughter that had a grandson, so you couldn't kick the daughter out.
Right.
You couldn't have the grandson on the street. So you having to take the daughter with the grandson. Okay. And then John came back and he stayed with us. So that was the two up in there. And then you had, I don't know if you ever met Jonathan,
I don't
but
think
anyway,
so.
his parents, one was already in jail, then the other one got hooked up with someone that got busted for drugs.
Mm.
And the end result was that one was going to go to CPS. And so all of a sudden we get woke up at like 11 o'clock at night, finding out that we need to go down to the school and assume grant custody. Otherwise, CPS is going to get there and take him and put him in the foster system.
Yeah,
So
you
then all of a
definitely
sudden we
want
had a
that.
grandkid. So here we are, you know, thought we were done. And all of a sudden, now we got a house full of taking care of kids again. And, we did what we had to do, and it turned out there was a lot of grandparents that are out there that were taking care of their grandkids because they're responsible kids and did stuff.
Right.
So um, that was a turning point in life, and that's when I guess I was originally at that point I was still doing karaoke, and I was bartending, and I was DJing and working in a nightclub, but that was okay when it was just us because
Right.
she could go with me and we're there. She was working during the daytime. We could deal with that. But then that didn't work. So that's when I actually started becoming decided about teaching. I was tutoring on the side, and then I started looking in about teaching and the profession, and I was attracted to it because I wanted a good job. I wanted a
Right.
good job, but I also needed a job that had benefits because you have kids, they get sick.
Need that
Okay.
stability and the
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah. You got, yeah. So it was that I migrated to teaching because of the interactions and everything else, but it was that. But then the whole thing about the teaching thing. So this is going back, this is 2004. So I got out off of active duty and everything else done with the Marines in 96. So for 8 years, I was like wandering in the desert. I was a happy camper. Then all of a sudden, all the kids and stuff come in. So now it's 2004. We had gotten married in 2003. So here's 2004. And now this thing about teaching came in
Mhm.
and was because of the benefits. And I looked at the pay scale and reminded me of being on active duty in the Marines because you looked at it as that you had you were going down the column based on how many years that you were in there. And then you can go column jump based off of your education. So I had my bachelor's and I
Mhm.
thought everything was going to be fine. I had a bachelor's in mathematics from the United States Naval Academy, and it turned out that was not good enough for California for a teaching credential.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to go back to school. And then you had, at that point, you had Bush. Yeah, you had the second Bush that was president. He came up with this thing called No Child Left Behind Act of 2001. And what that meant was that they decided that they wanted all teachers to be highly qualified. So to be highly qualified, they meant you need a master's degree. So I come back in to be a teacher and find out that my bachelor's wasn't necessarily good enough. And I had to go out and take other tests
Right.
to validate that. And I did that. But then I also, in addition to that, I decided I had to get a master's to get a teaching degree. So I decided I was going to be a substitute teacher and go to school at the same time. That was my game plan. I said, because then I can choose how many days I want to work a week.
Hmm.
And I was unemployment, but unemployment back there was like $400 a month. It wasn't squat.
Right.
But it was just enough. And I was going to still do my little DJ and do all that. But then it turned out that master's was a bear. And so the end result, I wound up. But again, when I went back again about student loans, we were talking about this last week, was that I was thinking, well, maybe I got something from the VA. Nope. So I didn't have anything from VA. So I had to go out and get a loan, a student loan. And I was okay with that because it make it so easy. You go ahead and fill out the
Yeah.
application.
Fill out the
They
app,
give you
give you
the
your date
money.
of birth, your social,
Easy. Yeah, they give it to you. You're not thinking about payments. Not once did they uh, show me an amortization. Matter of fact, I'm thinking back all this time. Not once
they
did
didn't
they
show
show
you
an
jack.
amortization table. It's
They
just
ain't
like
nothing
giving a
you
car
can do.
dealership too. When we go to the car dealership, you can buy a car. No, nobody shows you that amortization table unless you ask for
And even then, it ain't gonna have everything
it.
on it.
They ain't gonna have anything on it. It's just gonna have that payment. So, I signed up just like everybody else. I didn't have a choice because in order to get a teaching degree, you had to have a master's. So here I am up here substituting, but then uh, the high school I was working as substitute. So I started out doing substitute as a kindergarten teacher. Then I did third grade. I said, well, let me do substitute because I can tell where I want to teach at. And so I did elementary, I did a middle school a couple of times, and then I did the high school. And I I fell in love with the high school because I just couldn't deal with those little ones want to go to the bathroom all the time. I just couldn't deal with that. So, and then the middle school, oh no, no, they're in that stage where they're just getting close to puberty. You'd have no idea what the can of worms that's coming up out of, you know. Good thing about being a substitute, I would only go there and it was to just keep them alive. And then I
Right.
could just go on. I had to worry about the lesson plans and any of that stuff. But I eventually settled down in the high school because they kept calling me back. And I love math. And they every time they used me, I was going always doing math. And so I did that. But at the same time, then after about 5 weeks, they had me in a classroom because I had taken over a classroom that had three teachers. Three teachers. This was January. So
Right.
they had already got through three teachers before me. I mean, one of the kids had taken off his shoe and threw it up against the whiteboard at the teacher.
Oh wow.
I mean, I mean, it was, and they were all freshmen. So it was like 6 periods of having freshmen, you know. Oh my God, but I went in with my Marine Corps attitude.
Right.
I wasn't taking no crap. And I told the principal, I said, "You want me in here? Then you better take my back." And I would go, and I would not deal with anything. You get up out of it. When I came in, I said, "Here are my rules. That means you're going to come in my classroom. You're going to shut your mouth. You're going to sit in your damn seat. You're going to listen to my lessons. You're going to follow my instructions explicitly. And if you don't like it, you can get out my door." And that was the attitude I went. And then with them, I wound up breaking rules that I didn't know existed. I said, "This is what we're going to do." I said, because I realized that these kids were, oh man, they were a bunch. I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. We're going to go. I tell you what, for 4 days, Monday through Thursday, you do everything I'm telling you going to do. And then we're going to have a quiz. And if you get a B on the quiz, then on Friday, we're going to chill. We're going to chill. That means we're going to watch movies, or I'm going to have some pizza, or we're going to have some chicken, and that's what we're going to do." And so they said, "Oh, yeah, really? For real?" I said, "Yeah." I said, it was worth me to go ahead and pay for pizza or something like that to
Yeah.
have my sanity. So I did that. But I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be doing that, that it was against the district policy. But my principal, he just kept his mouth shut because he just knew that he was not doing any referrals and anything because I was up there doing my thing. And that's what happened. That happened for the next 5 months until summer was over with. Then they gave me a permanent teaching position. They crafted the position. They flew the position, but they
Hmm.
crafted it off of my background and my experience, which meant that when they were doing the prerequisites on who was qualifying for the interviews, my numbers were the top.
Right.
So it was set up for me to come in because the principal wanted me. And that was actually when I first chose that school because they had just had a race riot about a year and a half ago. So they had replaced the principal and put a black principal in. But at the same time, when I was substituting, starting out, they were just bad mouthing them. All the white, they had you had this group of teachers. All they did was bad mouth them, the principal the whole time. But anyway, so I wound up being a regular teacher full time and then going to school to work on my master's. And I did that for the next 2 years. Then I was also doing when you become a teacher, they have this, what we call the basic teacher training in order to become a tenured teacher. I had to do that too. So I was doing all of them. So I was going to school working 7 days a week. I was going to school teaching and then working on my master's for 7 days. So the end result, how much did it cost for my master's? It's $37,000. So I had to go in debt for $37,000 to
Right.
get my teaching degree. So, and I didn't worry about it at the time point because I didn't have to be, I didn't have any payments because I was in school. That was the
Right.
first thing. Next, then I realized I heard the other words talking about payments because, see, I was just starting to work on it. I hadn't really started making a whole bunch of money because it was based off of my bachelor's. So I was on column one. But what I did realize is I started doing my master's when I got half. Hey, I column jumped. And every time I column jumped, that was $3,000 a year. Okay.
Okay.
Then by the
Okay.
time I got my master's, I column jumped again. So I was in the middle of the columns. That added $15,000 on there. But again, it's not just me and the wife. It was
Right.
us and the stepdaughter and the grandkids and the sons and four other mouths that we're feeding.
Right.
And so um, when that started out, and then all of a sudden when I stopped, see, and so it was 6 months after I stopped school is when you have to start paying. Well, when that started happening, I started looking at the amount of money that I was going to have to pay. Then I heard about this, those the sweet word, the word called forbearance,
Yeah.
forbearance. Okay, and I said, what's forbearance? Or the other word is deferment.
Yep.
Okay, deferment. And I'm saying, what's deferment? What's for forbearance? What forbearance means you don't have to make your payments. What's the defer? Well, we defer like after I got done, 6 months deferred that I didn't have to pay. Okay. And I said, oh, okay, I think this is pretty neat. Okay. So I did that, but the only thing that they did not tell you is this thing called capitalized interest. In other words, when I was in deferment, they were charging interest for
Yep.
those months. And then what that became capitalized interest. And then what they did, they tacked that onto the principal of
Yep.
the loan. Forbearance, the same thing. They forbear, they forgave you that you didn't have to make the payment. So how do I get in forbearance? Where I said, oh, okay, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start working on my doctorates. So I started working on my doctorate, which meant I was in school, which was
Hmm.
okay because as long as I was in school, I didn't have to make any payments. But at the same time, what was clicking in the background was that capitalized interest. And so every year that I wasn't paying, but I was in school, they would tack on capitalized interest.
Got it.
Okay. And then eventually you get to the point where you can't be going to school anymore, or you shouldn't. You run out of degrees. But I still, as I mentioned before, I still had, I touched base with this, the teacher that I was talking about before, she had
Yeah.
gotten a master's,
She
got her
just kept
doctorate,
going to school. She just
and
kept going to
still,
school and kept going.
still going to school. Okay.
Now what's she going to
Yeah.
school for?
Her, huh?
Now is she still going to
She was
school
taking
for?
anything that she hadn't taken.
Good grief.
Anything she hadn't taken.
She thinks
That's the
degrees
whole
is
thing.
Pokemon cards at this point.
Yeah, but you know what? That's the bad that you're talking about having a screwed up system. Okay, is that they're allowing you to go and forbearance and everything else. Why? Because it's a damn trap. It is a trap. Plain and simple. I was looking at some data here, and these numbers are really killing me. Okay, so now let's look at the United States government right now. Just
Hmm.
like or any business, you have income, you have expenditures, bills that you're paying, okay?
Yeah.
But you also have income, which is normally based off of assets. So remember we talked about generational wealth, that you want to create assets.
Hmm.
Like for instance, and the things are not all the way what we think they are. Like for instance, your mortgage is if you have a house and you have a mortgage, that's a liability, it's not an asset. It's a liability because you're obligated to make a payment on it every month.
Right.
Whereas if you had went out and bought a rental property, okay, if you had taken a mortgage and you're buying a rental property, that is an asset because as long as your rent that you're collecting is more than your mortgage, then that
Right.
is. Well, let's look at our United States government and on the subject of student loans. So, if I had asked the question, the first thing, here's a good question. So, I was actually taking a look at this data, and this is going back in 2018. But if I had to ask the question about what do you think is the United States government's biggest asset? And when you ask that question to a lot of people, most people would think, well, it's got to be the taxes, right? It should be. It's all our taxes. In other words, where in the heck is the government getting this money, all this millions and billions of dollars that we're sending to Ukraine? Okay. or to any other foreign country that we've done. We're saying, well, it's got to be the taxpayers'
Right.
dollars. It's got to be out of our taxpayers' dollars. Or in this case, why it's like in this case, like Trump in his the administration, his whole big thing was always reducing the taxation on the
Hmm.
wealthy. With the idea is that now they're going to take that money that they don't have to pay on taxes to create more jobs. Now, how is that picture panning out here recently? The last
Not too
months,
well.
huh?
Not too well.
And especially for some people which are black,
Yeah.
okay, and also black women. It seems like a lot of them are being laid off because if they were in that middle class thing, which a lot of us went to government jobs,
Hmm.
military, or government civil service jobs, they just wiped that out. They
Yep.
just wiped it out.
Yep.
So I was thinking that it had to be taxes, right? Or maybe it's when we give them millions and billions of dollars for their weapons and stuff that they're paying us back. Well, I'm looking at their land. Okay, if everything's being destroyed and shot up the heck from Russia, there ain't very much for them to be producing to send stuff back to us. No.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out when you look at the chart, and I'm going to add that chart up in here on presentation to take a look at it, that in 2018, the number one asset for the United States government was student loans.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Ho, 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 ho. Guess what? 43% in 2018. 43% of the income for the United States government is student loans.
Wow.
Okay, now as
That's
of
crazy.
2025, it dropped down a little bit, but it's at 35. It's at 30. I think it's 34.5%, 34%, 34%, one third. It's the student loans.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. Now, I really got pissed off when I saw that because then remember last week I pulled up my account history. That's what I said
Hmm.
about, yeah, you need to go look at your account. Pulled up my account history and we looked at it and we saw how two-thirds of all my payments that I've been paying has gone to interest.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is crazy. This is crazy. It's crazy that yes. So on top of that, okay, my last year in school teaching, okay, there was okay. So in California, you have this California dashboard,
Hmm.
and the California dashboard was a way of accountability for the schools, for the states to the federal government. See, the federal government was giving money, okay, but right now that Department of Education is going to be flying out the damn window, okay, but they were giving money to Title One schools. So if you were in a poverty-ridden area like Compton or East St. Louis or whatever, those schools were having difficult times getting qualified teachers there. But as a result of that, there was funds that was coming from
Hmm.
whenever you had a Democrat involved in there, and for years there was funds coming. Well, in order to make sure that you were using the funds, they had accountability measures.
Okay.
So in the system, like in California, you have accountability measures. So there's certain things that as a high school you needed to do and report this to the federal government in exchange for getting money. And one of those things was really your scores in math, your scores in language arts, in other words, how are they reading? In other words, people need to be able to read, write, and need to be able to do arithmetic. Those are the
Right.
three things. Then now they started adding in college preparedness. In other words, are you ready to go to college? Okay, part of those in there. But also here recently was the last thing was student loans. So you always had this FAFSA. See, I didn't learn about that damn FAFSA application until I, here at the age of 50, wanted to become a teacher and I needed to get my master's and I didn't have any VA loans to do it.
Hmm.
So that's the first time I heard it. Right now, before I got to, I mean, before I left to retirement, that last year, they made it a requirement in California that as a high school senior, you have to complete the FAFSA. And if you're undocumented, you don't have a citizenship. They had this Dream Act, which was really the same thing. It was an application for a student loan, but you were undocumented, but you had to complete it to graduate. It's a graduation requirement.
How you gonna tell somebody they gotta fill out an application?
Yeah, you have to
Maybe they
fill.
don't want to go to college.
Right.
Maybe they
They
want
didn't
to go
say.
to the military.
Yeah.
Maybe they
They
want
didn't
to go to a
say.
trade school that doesn't require student loans. How you gonna
Yeah.
force someone? Like,
Yes.
like that's wow. That's right along the lines of the whole school to prison pipeline that they got in freaking other states.
Yeah. Except what they think they're slick is because they're saying, well, you have to complete it. It doesn't mean you have to do alone, but you have to complete the application. But wait a minute. But they know here by the data. The data says that if you complete the application, you have okay. For those that complete the application, have a higher possibility for going to college. So they're going it. So yeah. So now you're requiring them all to do it as a graduation requirement, which means that you're going to have more that continually do this. And why? Especially if you're in a poor area, your parents are not saving money for you to be able to go to college, for them to pay for it. So what else choice do you have? Just like I did with my master's. What choice did I have? I didn't have
Yeah,
$37,000 sitting in the goddamn bank. So that's the whole thing. So you're talking about who's in cahoots? The damn government's in cahoots. And it's again, this is like a reverse, what I'm going to call a reverse mentality of what I talked about Vietnam War. Vietnam War, you had the rich decided they wanted the war. Why? Because they make money. They made millions and millions of
yeah,
dollars because of the manufacturing of products and services for the fighting forces. Okay. But how do you keep that war? So they wanted that war to keep going. See, that Vietnam War, we shouldn't have been in there for all those years. Even Afghanistan. I just look back at some of the numbers. They were in Afghanistan for 20 years.
yeah.
What the fuck over? You know? Why? It's because of the rich.
It makes money,
It makes money.
and not only that, think about how wasteful we have become as a country when we do deploy places and come back. We spend all of this money on all of this product, all of these vehicles, gear, equipment. And what the hell do we do every single time we leave? We burn it, blow it up, leave it the fuck
Left
behind,
all those
sell it to
tents,
somebody else. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, freaking, that is millions and millions of
millions of dollars.
dollars. And then you wonder why we're constantly in this perpetuated state of national debt. Look at how often we've gone to war, how much we've spent on said wars, and how much equipment we've either left behind or destroyed.
So remember when I was talking about that 43? So it was 43% of the income was student loans out of 2018.
Mm-hmm.
That represented $1.3 trillion student loan debt. Now in 2025, that decreased to 34.5% of the income.
Yeah, because folks stopped going to school. They said,
Uh,
fuck it.
yeah, but the school no, but the student loan debt went up. It dropped down as a percentage of income of
Yeah.
33%, but the amount is at 1.8. So it increased by $500 billion.
Oh, good grief.
Okay. It increased the debt. Yeah. So, and the big problem with here it is on the student loan debt is that people need to, you're right, very simple. People need to wake the fuck up. Okay. And if yeah, they, it, it's really just mind blowing. And then I looked at it on top of it. I look here myself. Okay, I was a math major, right? Okay, but even though I had a math degree and stuff, I still did the same stupid ass crap that the vast majority of people. I knew about the loan, I knew about interest, I knew how to calculate that and everything else. But it was just like going to a damn car dealership. The only thing I cared about was about the payment. Women, I consider I was concerned with the first thing was one is that I needed to keep my job.
Right.
And so as a result, I had to get the master's to keep my job teaching. And it was a good job because it was paying money. And people said, well, I don't want to be a teacher because they don't make any money. Well, hey, I got news for you. Guess what? I was at six figures. I was over $100,000 earning $100,000 a year for the last 5 years as a teacher. So don't
I
tell me
think it
about,
totally depends on just where you're at and the state you're in, and not only
yes,
that, like you said, that said teacher's education level.
yes,
Because as you said, it's set up how it was in the military. You know, you get what you need to get, and you can leapfrog, hit those tiers, and everything else. But if you're just a teacher that is only meeting the required minimum for your education level, of course you're not going to make anything. That's
right,
how also, how they try to say that police officers don't make anything. That's a lie.
yeah,
Just depends on where you're at. Because I know there are some states where, these entry level officers are
especially
making 70, 80, $90,000 to start,
right. They're
and that's
making
not,
that, and
and
then they also, again, you're talking about the thing about overtime. It's the same thing as a
yeah,
teacher.
yeah.
When I just started out teaching, when I first, so I was a substitute. So when I was a substitute, but in the classroom, I was not getting paid the same as a regular teacher. It wasn't until after they flew the position and then I became a teacher, then my pay went up plus my benefits. Okay.
Right,
But then I only worked by contract with 7 hours and 20 minutes per day and but for 5 periods. So I was teaching high
right.
school. So I taught 5 periods, and you always had one period that was what your prep period is. So if I'm teaching algebra, which originally when I first started teaching, I only had one prep, and it was I was only teaching algebra, and I taught it 5 periods, the same thing. So I get 1 hour of prep. Um, so what you were able to do, then one day I was there, and one of the principals came up and he asked me, did I want to sell my prep? And I said, sell my prep? What are you talking about? He said, well, they have, you had the kids which were always being late, and they put them in EAC. If you're late going to class and stuff, or you
Hmm.
get in trouble, and they send you the EAC, it's like a monitor. And I said, and he says, well, what I want you to do is be able to go there and start teaching these kids, showing them some little discipline and stuff, and we'll pay your prep. And I said, okay, so what do you do? He says, well, we're going to pay you for that extra prep. I'm saying, oh, okay. So I'm thinking like, like 20 something bucks or something like that. So instead of eating, I bring my lunch there. I'm thinking, but no, I don't realize, see, I have to take my annual salary and divide it by the 7 hours and twenty minutes per day for the 5 days
Hmm.
and equate it. And it turned out on a daily basis back then, I was making like 200 something, $250 a day. Okay. Then you take that and divide it by the five. So it was like $50. So doing that once a day, that was $250 a week or $1,000 a month. I said,
Right.
holy moly, what?
Started
So
adding up.
yeah, that started adding up. And so I said, yeah, I do it. So yeah, as soon as I got that in my check, that was an extra $1,000. That was $12,000. I said, then the next thing I found about was that you got your contract as a teacher. And then when summer comes up, what happens? You got summer school. Okay. So if you teach summer school in that very first summer, I taught summer school. Okay. Then they do that same amount that we're paying, like $56 a day was the
Hmm.
250. Oh, so that's besides my salary that was there, but that was extra. So my first summer I did teaching. I worked like 10, no, I worked 20 days, and I got about like $5,500. I said, guess what I did for the next 10 years? Every year I did summer school. Okay. So you add all those up, and then that goes into a separate pot of money because when you're dealing with retirement, it is.
Hmm.
So teaching is a good professional that actually may, if I had known about teaching and how much you can make as a teacher and how the system work, I would have done that before the military in a heartbeat, man. Big time. Big time, big difference on understanding it. But the only big sweet thing would have been is figuring out when, in my case, if I had, because okay, so I already got my bachelor's paid from the Naval Academy. I did my 6 years on active duty. If I
Right.
gotten out that 6 years on active duty, but used that VA that I had that got taken away from me, I would have had my bachelor's and my master's and being a teacher at that time point that without the student loans and then would have been able to make six figures. I could have still went ahead and got my doctorate, but pay,
Computer, stop.
you know, if I had done that, oh man, I could have retired like when I was 50. Easy.
Computer,
Yeah.
computer. Well, go and plug that, please.
Is it
These boys
compute?
done set a freaking timer on the freaking Amazon.
Oh, Alexa, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's sickening. Still, this thing here about the student loans, um, it's a racket, and people need to know, So the worst thing is the good question is well, how do you avoid that? How do you still go to school and get that education or get that degree to do that with? So you either have a choice on that. But the wealthy, what they do, they avoid that because they have always gone out and started a business and they've used the structure of a business because what they do, they go ahead and form up an LLC and the profits in there, and they take that and put it into a 529 educational fund. And then they hire their kids. So they got the business. Then they hire the
Hmm.
kids and pay them $10,000 tax free to go ahead and give it. But they take that money and put it in the educational trust. Then when they're ready to go to school, they go ahead and they pull the money up and out.
They just paid for it
All,
outright.
all tax free, no student loan, and especially on them, they could get a loan from the business because you got the business can get a loan, but
Yep.
that loan is not like these damn student loans. Okay, it's like a regular. I mean, you would think that a car loan was worse, but we also knew for the most part, us having credit unions was the best thing. So when you're having a car loan that you get it through USAA
Right.
or get it through Navy Fed, you don't have the same type of loans that people get out there in the commercial banks. Save you
True.
tons of money. Matter of fact, every car that I've gotten a loan on out of Navy Fed, or in this case, I have a teachers union, which is paying me 5%
Mhm.
on any money and stuff I put on the savings and stuff. But I've used those to go ahead and pay off my cars. And that's what I'm doing up here now. So now coming up here, we have, because as I mentioned, the house is paid off.
Mhm.
And by next year, my solar's paid off. So all that's done. We have one car, one of my Cadillacs, a 2020 that only has 15,000 miles on it. That car is paid off. So we paid that car off. But I have my one car that I have, my XT5, which is on lease, but I'm turning that in.
I
Like
remember
I
you were
said,
telling me
yeah, I'm gonna
because
turn
y'all
that
don't need
in.
it.
I'm gonna turn that in because I'm gonna take that amount of money and pop it on the damn student loans to accelerate it because you can't pay them. You can't pay them off. You
Yeah,
can't
you
pay
can't
them
pay
off
them off
doing the regular
fast enough.
payments. No, you can't. And you have to look at it. You can't do it. You can't make that decision based off of that. And if you do that, it just what happens if I would continue to pay the regular payment that I'm thinking that I'm doing okay right now, I would never it will never be paid off. Never. Like and then it keeps going up. So if
Yep.
you haven't looked at your account on yours, if you haven't been um making payments on well, you don't have forbearance on it, so you still have it, but you making
Yeah.
payments on it or what are you doing?
I'm scheduled to start back making payments back here next month.
This is
I gotta
it,
start back
right,
making
because of the
payments.
loans that kicked in.
Yeah.
Because one of my loans and stuff, it has no payments due. And I'm saying, what the heck?
Yeah, one had no payments
Yeah,
due, but I got one that starts back next month.
yeah. So, yeah. So the big thing is you got to go and look at that account history and see what your payment is because you need to see what that breakdown is. Because otherwise, we know, guess what? It's still going to continue to grow. As a matter of
Right.
fact, yeah, that's the whole big thing on it. So, oh, well, this was student loans part two, mainly. Okay, did you watch any football here this week? Well, it just started. We only had the first
Well,
two games.
yeah, I was gonna say I think the games are just now starting yet. So I figured after we get done here, I'll see who's playing. I'm interested to see Ohio State versus Grambling State, just because I can't believe that they allowed that match to even happen.
Oh yeah, they all of the FBS teams play at least one Division One or Division Two on their schedule. They always do that.
I
So,
was like, oh
yeah,
man,
the bad thing about here with Grambling State is that the case is, yeah, so Ohio State is going to show no mercy because now, especially after this week, so I'm expecting some fireworks. Whoever
yeah.
they were going to play, it's not going to be nice.
Yeah, because they barely beat Texas, so they
They
gonna be
barely
out for
beat
blood
Texas.
this week.
Yeah, that they're going
And
to do that.
so I'm gonna have to see if I can watch that game because that one should be interesting.
Yeah.
Uh,
So Navy plays at 12:30, so I'm gonna be watching them. So they'll be in their second game. Um, really expected them to kind of see how they're playing out here, unless if somebody has a surprise, maybe up
yeah,
here to Notre Dame. But the way they've been looking, it may be a year for them to beat Notre Dame once again. That's been a
shoot.
while.
Hey, there, nothing wrong with that. I'm curious to see how North Carolina and Bill Belichick bounces back
Oh
after that
yeah,
first weekend debacle.
yeah,
He's
and
he's
but
understanding very quickly. This is not the pros. This is college.
you
The
can
what I'm saying.
coach. You can
And
coach all you want,
here,
but it's still dependent on those players on that field. I mean, they look sweet going down that first drive,
I
and then
mean, but at the same time, he has to understand that this is college. This isn't the pros. There is a true uh, difference in talent between these schools. And
oh
you might think you have good players, and you might have good players against certain schools. And other schools are just going to flat out embarrass you
yeah.
because they just have better talent. It's just the way it is. No matter what scheme you want to run, no matter how you want to coach it, if that other team got some true athletes and some true dogs, as they say, there's nothing you're gonna do. You're gonna continue to suffer 34-point losses all season long.
So let's see then. Who do we have college rankings? College football scores. College football rankings. So I was okay. So Ohio State, and they got the majority of the votes. They got 55
Well, I
first place
mean,
votes. Penn
yeah,
State, but Penn State, I don't know about LSU. Georgia is always, if they got their running game. Penn State is the one that actually has all the numbers stacked up. Uh,
yeah.
it's always the same. See, Texas, so they lost one game and they go all the way down. Well, they're down to number seven. So you got all these. I bet you got Texas, Clemson, and Notre Dame in the top 10.
Mhm.
All have one loss. I mean, yeah, with yeah,
Yeah.
0 and
It's
1.
one of them interesting years this year. I mean, shoot, Florida State beat freaking Alabama. No
I
one saw
know.
that coming.
Yeah, I'm seeing Alabama. And so okay, so what they got? Florida State's number 14. Yeah, Alabama. Navy's ranked number 41
Hey, at least they in the top 50.
in the top 50. They actually have a chance, and actually they've been looking at their quarterback, the Navy quarterback, as one of the top five Heisman um, candidates.
Candidates.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
nice.
So if he can pull off his 20 and 20, 20 rushing touchdowns and 20 passing touchdowns, he's pretty good. But
Okay,
they also get when Navy won last week 55, their second string quarterback came in, ran for two touchdowns and 195 yards.
nice.
Yeah. So okie dokie. All right. So I guess we're going to tie up in here and we're going to see what happens. Ohio State, Penn State. Let's see what happens to this top five coming up in here as we go ahead. Yeah. Again, the moral of the story, student loans suck.
Yeah,
And the government has held us, and most people they don't realize how much of the income the student loan is and how much money it is. And that's why Yeah, and right now you're going to have a lot of because a lot of people have not been making the payments because of
Yeah,
the other program.
yeah,
But here's the other bad part about it. Guess what? Student loans can't go away.
yeah. No,
It can't
no.
go away.
It's
If the student loans
it's not like any other form of debt.
no,
So
if
you
student
either
loans go
pay it
away,
off or it's gonna be there.
we're talking about something that's 1/3 of the income of the United States of America. So student loans can't go away. So people, they talk about forbearance. Guess what? That's why they don't want forbearance. Because forbearance, you can't just forgive that.
Yep.
You
Only
can't
way
forgive it.
that it goes away is if, like I said, people just say, you know what, enough is enough, and
Yeah.
figure out alternative ways to fund their college education.
Well, there is. I mean, really, except for the thing about the degree. I mean,
Hmm.
with Chat GPT and understanding how to use that, you can pick up. And the other thing is the old-fashioned way. How do people learn about stuff? Reading.
Yeah.
Okay. I did a little thing on my story on for Facebook this morning about things that I do every week. Like I'm actually reviewing about 4 to 5 books a week. Some of them are audio books and everything else that I get a chance to go ahead and review. And I don't have to pay for the books. Other people pay for them. They give them to me. But anyway, there are ways for us to do that, but we have to think about that. We have
Yeah.
to really think. All right, son. It's been exciting. We'll get together this next week and everything else, talk about some other little
Yeah.
other
Hopefully, I'll have
things.
these daggone pens out.
Okay. All right. It sounds great. All right. Give my best to my grandkids and your lovely wife.
I
And
will.
yeah, maybe one day I get a haircut. I don't know.
All
All right. All right. Take it easy. Love
right,
you.
Dad.
All
Love
right.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey through the world of education. We hope today's episode has inspired you and equipped you with valuable insights to bring back to your classrooms and communities. If you enjoyed what you heard today, don't forget to subscribe to Teach, Lead, Inspire, empowering educators for transformative change on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. And remember, the conversation doesn't stop here. Connect with us on social media to continue sharing ideas, strategies, and stories of educational empowerment. Together, we can create a brighter future for students everywhere. Until next time, keep teaching, keep leading, and keep inspiring. Goodbye from your host today, Jordan B. Smith Jr., and the team at Teach, Lead, and Inspire.